Everybody. Welcome to the February 8th, 2021 Lawrenceburg Redevelopment Commission meeting, and welcome to our audience, which is back. First public meeting that's allowing audiences this year, so we're glad that it's us. We're glad it's all of you, so welcome. And that'll be, I would assume, holding up for all meetings public going forward, so that'll be city council as well when that time comes, planning and zoning, all the other various meetings that we have. Kelly, if you want to provide a roll call for us.
Yes. Executive Director Brian Messmore.
Present.
President Richard Richardson.
Present.
Vice President Lenny Fryman is absent.
Absent.
Secretary Kevin Schaefer.
Present.
Member Sarah Jordan.
Present.
Member Brian Johnson.
Present.
School Board Member Brian Jansen is absent. And City Attorney Del Weldon.
Here.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Brookbank. If everybody's had a chance to look at the minutes from the previous meeting, I'll accept a motion to approve those minutes.
So move.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Sarah. All in favor? Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Messmore, do we have any announcements for tonight's meeting?
No, we do not.
Any of the other board members have any announcements they'd like to make?
I can. I have purchased a home in St. Leon, Indiana, so I'm going to be moving there. And I'm not sure the rules on redevelopment. I still retain a building here in Lawrenceburg, but I assume as my primary residence is changing, I'll have to.
When do you anticipate the move?
Soon.
Very soon. Well, congratulations on the new home.
Yeah.
Congrats.
Mr. Weldon, I think you'll have to maybe look into that for us, or,
No, she's correct. You have to vote and see on
all right. Any other announcements?
this. See you.
Oh.
It's only February.
Fulfill my position,
Yeah.
yes. I'll stay on until a replacement is found.
All right, Ms. Brookbank, you have the financial report for us this evening?
Yes, as of February 1st, 2021, the balance for redevelopment is $2,195,620.56. And after monies towards projects, it's $2,150,873.46.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions regarding that? All right, we'll move on to new business. And Mr. Messmore, we've got 342 and 344 Short Street, which I believe this was in our packets.
That's correct. In your packets, this is 342, 344 Short Street. Several months ago, we voted to proceed with getting the average two appraisals with the intention of acquisition and demolition, and to return that property and offer that property to the public for residential development. We have completed all those tasks up to the point of making the offer and the purchase price with the average of the two appraisals. And it was a two rental income property. Adding those two to the average of two appraisals, the total purchase price is $75,100. So I would be asking for a motion to proceed with acquisition and all the activities associated with that.
So, Brian, that's the acquisition and the demolition?
This is the acquisition.
This is just the acquisition, yes, but we would proceed with demolition, but we get bids on demolition, so we would come back for bid openings for demolition.
Okay.
Are there any other questions on this? Go ahead and accept a motion now, if you would, to move forward with the acquisition of 342, 344 Short Street, the amount of $75,100.
So move.
Do we have a second?
I second that.
Motion is seconded. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. And the ayes have it. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Move on to our LRC Main Street non-owner occupied program discussion.
Okay, this evening I wanted to open up discussion on hard to say, non-owner occupied residential is what we're discussing, but there was some discussion, some consensus building, and it seemed appropriate that we have this discussion this evening on potentially piloting a program for non-owner occupied residential paint and facade. If you remember, we have a residential exterior improvement grant program at Main Street, and it is for owner occupied. So there's a verification process where we make sure that the owner occupies the residence, and that's one of the qualifications to receive those grant funds. So the question and discussions that have been around for months and maybe even longer than that is it good or beneficial for us, and this is the discussion, to run a pilot program to allow non-owner occupied residential homes, so it would be a rentor applying for a grant similar to that of the residential homeowner occupied. Did I follow all that?
Is that set up with the same parameters?
It's set up with the same parameters. Right now, it's the maximum you can receive is $5,000, and it's $2 to every $1. So it's $2 of grant funding to every $1 of private funding. So max, I mean, if you spent $2,500 on, you can get $5,000.
What's our contribution to that program per year?
Ooh.
I can't remember off the top of my head.
Oh, let's see. I've got it somewhere. Let's see. Is the total on here?
Well, and while you're looking for that, I'd like to bring up, what about mixed-use properties? What are
Did
the
you say you were leaving?
What about a commercial / residential type building?
Keep going. Keep talking. I'm gonna try if I can find this number.
Well, there needs to be a definition of what that entails, because I think there's a lot of mixed-use type properties in our city limits.
You would mean one maybe has a retail storefront on the bottom and then living quarters up above that?
Right,
two or
because
three
that's sort of a
possible
vague,
apartments?
non-owner occupied. Does that only include residential rentals that are,
Yeah, that's what this discussion is, residential only.
okay,
Now, there is a commercial paint and facade that's available for downtown, which have rentals underneath and apartments upstairs and certain.
just clarifying for the audience.
Oh, okay. So this is for residential.
Okay.
That was the intent of the discussion. So, the premise of the grants was to encourage home ownership, and for lots of obvious reasons, that was the case. But it's not out of the question that the community could benefit from some beautification on some of the rental properties as well. But historically, we've just been a little bit reluctant to reward that in a rental position.
So Brian, who would the applicant be?
The applicant would be the owner.
Okay. The tenant wants something done, they can't get it done through this program without going through the owner of the building.
That's correct. And that's part of the discussion, but that's the way
Okay.
it is in a commercial paint facade.
But I mean, I think what you're saying though, Kevin, if a renter wanted to come up to an owner and say, hey, I think we would like to do this, and maybe they were a long-term tenant or whatever, well, the owner might say, yeah, no, I don't have the money, or maybe they would say, well, I think it's a great idea, and I do have the money, and yeah, I could do it, or maybe, you split it even. I mean, if it's a long-term tenant, maybe they're, but that's an agreement between the tenant and the owner, I believe, at that point. But I think it's a good program because I think it benefits what we're trying to do with the city as far as clean it up and make it look presentable for everybody. And I think there are some rental properties down here that could use a little bit of love.
And just thinking, I mean, why would we care if the renter wanted to make those improvements? It may not be likely, but would we care?
Well, I think it would be up to the owner though to determine
Right.
whether they wanted to, now,
So they'd have to, there had to be an approval.
I think
from
they
them.
would have to be on the same page,
All right.
You wouldn't want the renter coming up and saying, hey, I'm gonna go ahead and put new siding on this and I'm gonna make it bright orange.
And that's why the premise was the owner would have to be involved in that application process. So,
Some of them are historic buildings as well, so that would
Yeah.
have to go through the historic approval process too. I only ask about the,
Sorry, gentlemen.
Lenny, I only ask,
mixed up.
I only ask about.
better than the days.
Yeah, at least you're here. I only ask about the funding piece for the.
I know.
What we already do now, because I wondered if you had any sort of envisionment as to how much funding you would put into a program like this. Or
Well,
what you would see as a director.
it was a pilot, and, we've, I mean, we can throw, that's kind of a loose word there in it, but we could, we could say 50,000, up to 10 homes, $5,000 max, dollar to dollar match, as an example, versus homeowner occupied who gets a little bit more on the dollar, maybe because it's rental, we go 1 for 1. And it's a pilot, we can,
Try it for a year.
and
then
whatever
if
and there's always,
tweaks.
as
could be
long
made.
as we've been doing it, there's always, not always, but occasionally something that creeps up and we have to, take it to a vote, but.
And Main Street would facilitate it
Yep.
as they do now with the other programs.
Yep.
So we already have the bones.
We have the bones. We would take the residential exterior improvement grant and change the words owner occupied to non-owner occupied and some definition of that, and change, if the board so chooses, change the 2 to 1 to 1 to 1, or we can leave it the same.
Brian, is Main Street on board?
Yeah.
Are you looking for a motion?
I didn't know if you wanted to, if we, just wanted to discuss, you wanted to think about it, if you want to take it to motion. I'm fine with either way. I didn't know if you feel comfortable. It's a pilot.
Did you say what the total amount was that we,
I said 50, but,
50? Okay.
yeah, I mean, I wouldn't
Just so I could.
get,
What do we put in the program now? Was that on?
The
65, isn't it?
65
Put
is the.
65?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I
I
mean,
think 50 is a
looking
good
at,
starting number, but I'd be interested to see like what the, because there's some owners in town that maybe have 10 rental properties. You don't want them to gobble up the first 10 properties, I
Right.
think limit
That's a
the
good point.
owners to maybe 1 property per year. There's some, I think we need to look at the language a little bit.
Agree.
but-
Brian, I think a check and balance in that area is that if it's truly a 1-to-1 match, they've got to have some skin in the game, and I don't think a landlord with 10 rental properties is going to want to put that much money in at one time. Maybe they are.
and possibly so, but I think we do need to be prepared for that, if that's what we're presented with. I mean, there are parameters like that. I mean, you can only apply once every 3 years, so we're used to sorting through some of that stuff, but it would make sense to me that, 1 per year per owner would probably be fair.
I'm in support of the program, but I do think it opens up a slippery slope when you have properties maybe owned in personal names versus LLCs, development companies. How do you determine, maybe there's partnerships?
Ownership interest, yeah, right. Well, if they're an LLC, but you gotta put dollar for dollar, so they're
Right.
not, it's not gonna be that we're gonna be out money and they're not.
Well, I would move then that one entity, or, I guess that would be the way to solve that, would be one entity can have 1 property entered into the program per year. Agreeable?
I would like to open up the idea of maybe having them be access more than one application, more than one piece of the program. If they have 10, I think if they did a few, I think that's okay. Our goal is to beautify downtown. So we're kind of handcuffing ourselves by limiting it too much. What do you guys think?
What if you got a guy that's got 10 and you got a guy that's got 2 and that eats all of it up and then somebody else wants in and they can't get in?
There's got to be a cap on how many.
Yeah, I don't
It's gotta
think a
be
guy
for everybody, you know.
Maybe it's
I don't
when the
think a guy should
project
get
is
10.
completed.
It's always
So
One
after the,
project at a
yeah,
time.
one project at a time, it gets completed, he can put in his application for the next one. So that allows other people to have their application in.
Well, maybe what we can do is just have somebody draft up, you know, a potential list of things, and then we can kind of proofread and pick it apart, and then come up with something, you know, hard in writing, and then go maybe at the next meeting,
Just think
maybe,
it
you know,
simplifies
approve something.
something.
Yeah, have Main Street draft up a
A rough
proposal for
draft
what
or
it would look
something,
like,
yeah.
and then let us see the verbiage.
And that was the intent of the discussion.
Yeah.
I assumed that we would find something that we had to vet in addition to tonight. Let's keep on it, see if there's anything else that crops out of this. What's the downside?
So we've gone from 1 to 10. What do you guys think about just a few? If a
3.
landlord had the
How about
opportunity.
2?
The goal is to beautify downtown, right?
3, but you only do
Well-
one project at a time.
Yeah, it's one project at a time, I think, so then it allows
But I like
everybody.
Kelly's idea too. They can apply for one and get one done.
Get it done,
And
apply
then
for the
maybe,
next one.
but we got to put some sort of cap on it, you know. But and I guess my thing is at the end of the year too, if we've got unused funds, you know, then maybe since we're piloting it, well then maybe the following year it's something we raise that limit to 3 properties, or you know. But let's start with maybe 2, or you know, got to make it fair to everybody that is involved.
So you're
like I
saying
said,
like
it's a one-year
2 per
pilot.
year, and then they can only do it upon project completion. So the first one gets done, then they can apply for their second one for the year.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
I mean, it takes
Is
a
this
while to
something that
get.
we
And then
can-
maybe next year we'd move it to 3. I mean,
So whatever we
if it
do, we want to
works.
stick with it for a year. It's
Yeah,
not
I think
something we
Brian's
want to
had pilot
change
it, so-
midway through if we found it wasn't getting enough
Well, really and truly,
interest.
if we're, like you said, if we're still got money at the end and nobody's applying, so if they want to apply again and we got the money, why not?
right.
But if they don't, you know, if we're out of money, then you can't do it.
Well, and there are a lot of checks and balances with the Main Street programs. I'll agree with that. I just had quotes done to paint my new house, and I couldn't believe how different they were. I had one quote come in at $2,600 and one at $11,000. I'm painting the same room, so it's good to get multiple quotes and check that, you know. Just because someone's local and a preferred vendor doesn't mean that they're giving you the best deal, so.
Right.
Yeah, and
think it's
all
required.
applications require 2 quotes. When verification of work's done, you know, there's,
So commonly, folks that own rental properties are do-it-yourselfers. How do we feel about a do-it-yourselfer doing a project?
we do not pay for labor of a do-it-yourselfer.
Okay,
Pay for materials and upon completion.
okay, so this would be consistent with the other program?
Yes.
Would be, yeah, that's what the residential is at the moment, isn't it?
That's a good thought.
All right, we'll draft something up and get it out to you in a couple weeks.
Sounds good.
Okay.
And then if something comes up in between, throw it out there.
And then vote on it.
Where's the
have a vote
commission leaning
the next
on-
meeting,
On
next
the
meeting.
dollar amount, dollar for dollar?
I think
Dollar
dollar
for
for dollar. up
$2?
to- Well, since we're, like I said, this is just my opinion. I think dollar for dollar for 50,000 for the first year. Maybe you expend your money in the first 3 months. Maybe you don't because it's not as enticing. Well, maybe at the end of the year, you know, when you redo it, then maybe you do the 2 for 1. You know,
Well, I mean, you know, and always our goal is, if public's involved at all, is you know, we like to have private investment to exceed that amount of public investment. So, just in general, we like to turn it the other way.
Question, Brian, is this exterior only?
Exterior
Okay.
only. Curb appeal.
Mhm.
roofs,
So-
porches, paint, windows, doors.
So Brian, do we want to go the other way on this one? 50 cents on the dollar.
The
They
math
sp-
gets harder for me.
They spend 5, we give them 2,500. It's
No.
our,
No.
okay.
No, we'll get something, we'll have something typed up and then get it out to everybody, an email. You guys can look at it, make your notes, and hopefully we can get it prepared for the next meeting.
All right, awesome.
Mr. President, can I make a comment?
Yes, sir.
I just want to say I appreciate this discussion, because I've been mulling over this for a long time, and just the input every one of you guys brought. I mean, it just brings out so much more stuff to think about, and this is honestly, I think, how it's supposed to work. So I appreciate you guys taking the time and really digging into this. So I just want to applaud you guys on that. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Justin, appreciate that. Was there anything else to add to this?
No, we will, we can put something together pretty quickly and get it out to you.
If anybody has any additional comments or anything, as Brian said, make sure you email Kelly or himself
Yeah.
to get that information over to him. I have nothing else under new business this evening, unless anybody else has anything. So we can move on to old business. We do have a Main Street report that's been provided to us.
Yeah, it's in your packet, and if I may just point out, we did, speaking of paint and facade, we did have 9 residential paint and facade applications. We approved 7. And the 2 that weren't, we were having trouble determining exactly if they were owner occupied or rented. So there's situations sometimes where they might be in a family member's name, and and again, we're not trying to lose sight of what the goal is, but we got to be careful that we stick to the black and white, as completely as possible. So, but anyway, a very well high level of participation in that program. We've had projects, Heiner Heights, Sunny Slope, Bel Air, West Center, 3rd, Bilby, High, and a couple on High. So it's being utilized throughout the community. So
I think it's great it's going on all over the city. It's not just in one particular area, but you've got it all over the city, different city streets, being able to take advantage of it.
Hey, Brian,
yes, sir.
this report brings up a good point. There's one on here that is declined because it's not owner occupied.
Right.
So just to add a note on this new program, should it be habitable? Should there be somebody living in it? Are we going to plug money into a vacant building? Just a note to kind of chew on as you create that one pager for us. If it's falling down, do we want to plug money into it?
I'm going to say it should be occupied, just sitting here, but
It may not be occupied at the time, though.
You have to make sure your investment's worth it.
Right.
yeah, I mean,
Or give them a
Occupy and-
timeline, like say, well, we can go for this, but it's got to be, you have to have it occupied within 6 months after the renovation's complete, or 3 months, or there's got to be some sort of it
gets hard chasing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's possible, but
But a
Right.
cap of $5,000 doesn't do that much in construction.
Right, and this is exterior anyway, so they should be able to live on the inside,
That's what I was gonna say. Gotta be living there.
right?
occupied.
Yes.
Well, we have occupied in the definition of the other one. Comes
Yeah,
together,
I think
so.
stick with that.
Any other additional questions? Everybody? If there's no other old business,
Good.
good. No other old business. If everybody's had time to review the claims of the previous, or claims for this meeting, I'll take a motion to approve those.
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Lenny. Do we have a second to approve the claims?
I'll second.
Kevin Schaefer seconds. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Ayes have it, motion carries.
May I make one comment?
Yes.
In the claims, one of them was for the RDC handbooks. If anybody needs one of those, I have them in my office. I don't know if everybody has one. There was an updated version. Dell's office got printed for us. I think it's from last year, so if you need one, let me know. I think I have 4 more copies up there.
Do you have the electronic version?
I do not. I'm guessing Dell would. I'll check.
All right, thank you. So we'll move on to audience comments. Have we got any audience comments this evening? Come on.
Yes, you want me at the podium?
You
I
can make-
apologize for my attire. I had knee replacement, and right now comfortable's good, so. My name's Greg McAdams, and I think I've talked to everybody on the board, with the exception of Mr. Fryman. A little history, over a year ago, I inquired about the lots that you own on West High. And at the time was told that, I think you had 2 lots at the time, you might have 4 or 5 now, that they were not for sale. I have followed up through that year, and I think as recent as 6 months ago, we had a special meeting to discuss those lots. And at the time, I think you had the special meeting and really nothing was resolved, not much discussion, and then it was dropped. And I've come back a couple times with letters to everyone on the board and didn't even get a reply. And then I've tried phone calls. So I would at least like to, and I'm not here to cause trouble, I would at least like to have the board discuss this in an open meeting, because I'm having a hard time figuring out what's going on with those properties, because I'm not being told anything. And through my discussions with the board, I think there's quite a few of us that don't know what's going on. If there's some other use for those, I think it's valuable to the public to know what that is, and if that's the route the board chooses to go. Right now, my wife and I, we sold our home. We'd love to build a house down on that end of High Street. I've heard Kevin tonight twice say the goal is to beautify downtown Lawrenceburg. And I think new homes are certainly a good way to go. I think the programs you guys have are awesome. The program you just discussed tonight is awesome. I think it's a great thing. But the housing projects that you've been doing, and you mentioned 342 and 344 Short Street, to be in that residential program also, it's fantastic. I don't know why you would want to keep it from happening on the other side of town. So I guess I'm just here to figure out why it's taken me over a year to get some kind of answer.
Well, I think the answer is, and always has been, that, and we've discussed at length in public meetings, that that's part of a potential larger project, and that we have not decided to move forward and offer those lots to the public, because we are still believe that in the potential investment of larger development project that may or may not occur down there, and that the investment we've made down there has a higher return if we, ease into what might be the possibilities in the future in that community. And that's been, we've discussed it multiple times in public meetings. We have not moved. The decision is we haven't made the decision to make the lots available for sale. And the reason is because we thought we might hang on to them for a potential larger redevelopment project in that community that would benefit the city in a much greater magnitude than several individual houses.
To make that decision that you didn't want to sell, you would have had to make a decision. Somebody would have. And I would like to see the board vote on it rather than just be individuals wanting to build a gated community that nobody really has an interest in doing. That's my only question. How can you make a decision that's never been come up in front of the board as a vote? You've made your decision not to sell them, I understand that.
Well, that's not true. I mean, it's been discussed. No one's made a decision without following the proper procedure, so that's not fair to you to state.
Now, what I'm saying is, there's been a decision not to sell.
Greg, no one asked to sell you this property. I know you want the property, but no one asked to sell it.
Well, I guess my question is, as a person now that lives in downtown Lawrenceburg, a taxpayer, because we own other land, even over at the fairgrounds, pay quite a bit of taxes. I guess I would like to know what is on the table for that end of town.
But Mr. Messman just explained it.
What is it?
He just said it. I mean, he could say it again. I guess.
Potential larger redevelopment project.
That's kind of broad.
Well, it is broad at this time.
So you don't have a plan, basically.
There, not a specific plan, but there is value in knowing that that investment down there could grow if we can find something or somebody else is interested in doing something different down there. We're building a $32 million apartments. Certainly will have value to add to those properties.
I disagree. I don't think it'll add value to an empty lot. And I also know most of those properties down there you'll never get, because some of them are privately owned. And
I may not be interested, Greg. Maybe somebody else is.
Well, I find it disappointing, I guess. That's from my standpoint. It just seems like I've been put off for over a year.
You haven't been put off. I have people call all the time, and I tell them the same thing, and most people go, that's not a bad idea.
Well, the other day you asked me, how do we know anybody else is interested? But you've had calls, right?
Calls all the time for residential development.
That's what I'm saying. I don't understand.
All the time.
I don't understand why you wouldn't want to continue the program.
Why explain to you why?
Well, it's not much of an answer.
Okay, you have your opinion.
Sure I do. I find it disheartening that I've been trying to get on the agenda for 2 months. I can't do that. Wasn't even allowed coming to the meeting because of the COVID, but they lifted restrictions. Mr. Richardson, right. But I thought I could have got a courtesy call saying they lifted restrictions. I had to find out on my own.
I think we sent out a text to all of
Not
the
to,
city, didn't we?
not to me. I didn't get it. So,
On the reach alert, it's supposed to go to everybody.
We did a press release too.
Any additional audience comments tonight?
I want to thank Mr. McAdams for bringing up his opinion, and I know that's a hard conversation for all of us, and I talked to Brian about it today, and it's a hard decision. I think and no answer is not a good answer. I understand that, but I appreciate your phone call, and I'm interested in it too. I think we have our different hats we wear in different capacities, and I'm excited to see what happens in Lawrenceburg and want to stay involved, and I think it's coming. Just give it some more time.
We appreciate you, Greg. We haven't forgot you. You've been talked about quite a bit. We just don't know what, we want to make the best move for Lawrenceburg, what's going to be best for all of us. And right now, we really can't say because we don't know. But we're trying to figure it out as quick as we can. But you've been talked about a lot.
well, and I appreciate that, but I also know you're, I'll call her a real estate expert because I think she's the only one that's a realtor on your board. I think she will tell you, you never know when the real estate business is gonna go belly up. So while the getting's good, you might wanna get going.
I don't disagree.
The best way to look at these properties, guys, we've had, and I know that there are different boards, and, you know, every board is different, and from last administration to this one, but those properties obviously have been discussed. I mean, Mr. Schaefer and Mr. Messmore and Mr. Richardson, you know, everyone's kind of had a little bit of discussion at different times. But the most important difference between when we started the residential property project and now is that there is a concerted effort to not just buy a piece of property, demo it, and sell it for $1. Because that doesn't benefit anyone except the person buying the property. And then they've gotten a piece of property that was purchased and demoed using same thing, it looks the same, but instead of just doing it haphazardly, we have a plan for the different areas of downtown. A good example is the couple properties that we did by Acapulco's. So that's a good example of buying them, demoing them, and then getting them back on the market quickly, because that part of town needed some improvements, needed them pretty quickly, and a lot of the impetus there was to take property that was dilapidated and replace it with a good new home, a nice looking home. And remember that the statutory purpose of redevelopment is to identify areas that need improvement and focus efforts on making those improvements according to a comprehensive plan, according to a big picture plan. And so there are certain properties that could warrant a longer term plan. And the properties that are around and close to the Flaherty and Collins development have been identified as potentially fitting that bill, where they could be developed according to a higher set of building standards. You know, we had Paul Seymour in here, and he said, hey, that's the greatest idea ever. You know, let's take some areas of downtown and fill those needs, but if there are other areas of downtown that have different needs, then they require a different plan. So what Mr. Messmore is saying is that those properties on High Street have a longer term plan. He needs to discuss that with everyone. So I understand the frustration, Mr. McAdams, but when that plan is approved and created by this board in a public meeting, then anyone in the community, yourself included, will have the opportunity to develop there just according to that bigger plan, because that plan benefits the entire city, which is our statutory purpose.
Well, and I'll rebuttal that because I really didn't need an explanation. I understand what he's saying. My question would be, what if there was 3 board members right now that wanted to sell those lots for residential in your program? You wouldn't know because you don't bring it up in a meeting. That's all I'm saying. You've made a decision to wait for something bigger and better without voting on it. That's what I'm saying.
Do you have any additional comments? All right. If not, I will go ahead and take a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So move.
Motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Lenny. All in favor, aye.
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 Any opposed, nay. Motion carries.
I want to apologize for being late. I was misinformed. I thought it was supposed to start at 6, and I was trying to get down here early. And I heard they had another meeting.
Sounds like you were early.
And so Brian says,